All right, welcome to our walk today. I wanted to cover a few subjects that we covered this week. First, the SEC. I want to summarize that a little bit more. A couple days after I posted the episode on that, I want to go over the Evangelical pastor that Jeff McCullough and the reaction series that I'm doing. And then lastly, I want to go back to President Oaks and the Respect for Marriage Act and the clarification that he made on the on the position of the church in supporting the Respect for Marriage Act. First, the SEC. Summation on this. A couple more days have gone by. There's a little bit more information that's come out, but the bottom line is this. What is the wrongdoing? What is the motive? Here's the problem I had with the original, and you could see this immediately in the reporting, for example, by the Salt Lake Tribune. Their topic or their headline was about the church hiding assets. And that is really gross journalism. It really is, because they weren't hiding the assets from the SEC. That's not what it was. We want to be really clear on what was happening with that. They reported all of the assets. What they had done, make it very simple here, is they had taken the parent company, the parent money management company called Ensign, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Ensign Peak Advisors. They took several of the assets out of that money management firm, the assets that are owned by the church, and put them down into lower companies, other LLCs that also would require filing, right? Where you have to disclose the assets in there. Now, it remains to be seen why they did that, and that's the real topic I want to cover. But they moved the assets down into other companies so that apparently they would not have such a high public profile of assets in that one company. In other words, if they showed $50-60 million or $1 billion in publicly traded assets, they didn't want to get up into that level, right? And so they moved things around, put them in these lower companies, and still reported the assets in those lower companies. The 13F that filing forms that had to be filed for all of the assets, that's what they did. The problem I had originally was it was very obvious that the Salt Lake Tribune was trying to say that the church was trying to hide their assets away from the SEC, away from maybe the IRS, because you had all this talk about tax evasion and all these other things. And none of that appears to be true, none of it. So their implication is false. And they know that, and that's what they were trying to do. Now, was there wrongdoing? Yes, there was wrongdoing, because you can't do that. There are reasons you can't do that. They decided to keep doing it. There were even some employees that did leave Ensign Peak Advisors because of the way they chose to manage this. And that's why they're fined. They should have been fined, right? The $5 million. They should have been fined. The problem is not in hiding the assets. That's not the problem. The problem is mostly a fiduciary issue of Ensign Peak management was still managing the assets in these lower companies. And you can't do that. So, because it breaks fiduciary rules and regulations. Now, even that is a little sketchy, because the church owns Ensign Peak Advisors, and they own all of the assets inside. So even though it is a fiduciary issue, it's more of a general principle than it is, hey, you're hiding it from the owners of the assets. The owners of the assets is the church. I hope that makes sense. So that's the biggest issue, and that's what I was trying to put forth in the episode that I did, and it still holds true. At least there is no additional information that there is any other kind of hiding of assets and wrongdoing, hiding away from the IRS or hiding from the SEC or anything else. If more comes out and it's different, I'll cover it. I'm happy to do that. And consider what the SEC's position was on this. How bad do they think it was? Well, you can go through and read the report and pull out a whole bunch of bad language, but the bottom line is they assessed a $5 million total fee between the church and Inside Peak Advisors. $5 million. In 2022, all of 2022, the SEC collected $4.19 billion in fees. You know how much the average fee was? Remember, the SEC, this is for large companies, large money management firms. You know how much the average is on those fees? $5.51 million average fee, right? That's I'm up above Phoenix here. Kind of see the view that we have coming through here. 5.51 million is the average fee. So the church's fee, how bad was everything that had happened here, even though there was no actual hiding of assets from the church or from the SEC? It was lower than the average fee. It was all lower than the average fee. So look, I'm not saying it shouldn't have been done. It should have been done. I'm not saying it was a good thing, but I kind of get it. I kind of get why they don't want to be a target and have all of the money up for public view, because that is public information. And think about all the brethren traveling around, and you've got this public fund. And what I think they're going to end up doing is they're going to start going into other assets in these funds that are not publicly traded and lower that number, right? Because then they don't have to probably report all of that. They can go into real estate and other assets that, I don't know. If this is such an important thing for them, for whatever reason, to keep the lower profile, they can do that. They can go into non-publicly traded funds. Now, why do they want to do it? Why do they want to lower the public profile on this? That's the question. Inside the church, what is understood there, generally speaking, and this has been commented by some with knowledge and authority within the church, and even reported, that the church did this because they don't want the membership to know about how much money they have, because they're afraid that the members will stop paying tithing. So a couple things on this. Number one, I really wonder if that is true. It seems to me like that is more about stirring the pot and flaming the fire, what's the term I'm looking for here? Anyway, they're trying to stir the pot and get more out of this and make it so that there is less trust in the running of the church for the members. That's pretty obvious. However, that doesn't mean it's not true. And that's the question I have. If that is true, then that is a problem to me. That would be the problem, is the motive. Because the motive is not salacious in terms of financially hiding things and getting out of taxes or anything else. I don't see any of that. None of that has come to light, even after a couple days here. But if the church actually does believe that they need to lower the profile so that church members will continue paying their tithing, then that's a problem with trust. And that's a problem with the relationship of the church with their members. And that's a problem of operating out of fear and making bad decisions. Now, that may not be their motive. I hope it's not. I really hope it's not. But who knows? I'd like to find that out. To me, it seems more like they just don't want the public profile out there of having a certain level of assets. And they're trying to cover that up. That I understand. That I agree with. Is it over? No, it's going to continue to go. We're probably going to hear more news coming out of Australia, New Zealand, maybe Canada, on similar investigations in how they're managing this. So they might have to adjust how they do it. They might have to be more transparent, or like I said, they might need to liquidate out of some of these public funds and go into more hard assets that are not publicly traded. All right. Number 2, the evangelical pastor. So Jeff McCullough, a friend of mine, I'm doing a new series on his reading of the Book of Mormon as an evangelical pastor, right? And doing kind of a reaction of what he's reading. So I've done 1st Nephi, I'm about to do 2nd Nephi, and I think he's already read Jacob. A couple things on the feedback and the comments that are coming through on this. First of all, I really like what he's doing. And I want to talk about some of the feedback and comments that about him on this and what he's doing. There are some that look at this like he's not doing it faithfully. He's not doing it with an open mind. He's not applying the same reading as he does of the Bible to the Book of Mormon. He's using anti-Mormon arguments sometimes. First of all, again, look at it for what it is. He's an evangelical pastor. So he's going to have some of a framework of this is not scripture. This is perhaps good. Perhaps there are good things that are written in here, but this is what 17 million people believe in this book. And I'm going to read it, and I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to talk about it. And then what is he going to do? He's going to take the framework that he has, the experience that he has, and he's going to curb some of the things he might want to say. And he does. And so it's going through this, watching him do this, is really just an exercise in interfaith interaction. That's the way I look at it. I think it's very interesting. I want his background, looking at it through his lens. That's interesting to me. It's kind of fun. And more than that, it is an olive branch that we don't usually get from evangelicals. I mean, let's be honest. We can talk about just about any other Christian, denominations and groups, and that one's the toughest. That is the toughest one. And a lot of it has to do with our history for us, right? How things happened with the church in Missouri and Nauvoo, and it's a difficult past. So please take that for what it is. The one thing I will say, and I mentioned this in a short about a Catholic theologian. I talked about that, I think, actually in the episode. But whether you believe in the Book of Mormon or not, the text itself, right? The text itself is incredibly Christian. And I would like to see him bring that out more. Just even in what he's read in 1st Nephi, he didn't cover this, but, 1st Nephi 19:18, I, Nephi, have written these things unto my people that perhaps I might persuade them that they would remember the Lord their Redeemer. It's the whole purpose of why he wrote 1st Nephi. And then as he gets into 2nd Nephi, I haven't covered that one yet. But obviously in 2nd Nephi, it's chapter 25, 26. And we talk of Christ, we rejoice in Christ, we preach of Christ, we prophesy of Christ, and we write according to our prophecies, that our children may know to what source they may look for a remission of their sins. It's incredibly Christian. And so I hope he will open up to that a little bit. And it's not like he has to support it as something that he believes in, but at least I think that anybody that reads sincerely the Book of Mormon is going to see the focus on Jesus Christ in the text, right? I mean, you can go through all of the Book of Mormon. It's got 6,000 verses, more or less. And in those verses, the Book of Mormon refers to Jesus Christ 4,000 times. 6,000 verses refers to Jesus 4,000 times. Okay? Pretty focused there. Pretty focused. There's over 100 different names and titles. Remember, titles are important. And titles of Jesus Christ in the Book of Mormon. So I'm going to continue with that series. I think it'll be fun. I'm going to catch up to him so that I can hopefully put out a reaction video as he reads each book, just maybe just within a couple of days after he puts up his episodes. I think it's fun to watch. He's over at Hello Saints. That's his YouTube channel. Okay. The Catholic theologian, I did not mention that in the clip. If you happen to see the clip, that was Stephen Webb. And he actually wrote an article called Mormonism is Obsessed with Christ. And I think it's over at First Things. And so that's who I was talking about with the Catholic theologian. When he talks about, he says something to the effect, I don't remember if it's in that article or not, but something to the effect of, the Book of Mormon is more Christian than the Bible. And he's just saying it's obsessed with Jesus Christ. All right. Okay, lastly, President Oaks, the clarification of the Respect for Marriage Act in the church press release. He clarifies again, saying, look, we are not changing our doctrine. And that is the biggest harm I think is happening out there from certain pockets of the membership. Is telling people that, okay, we just need to wait a little bit longer until we change the doctrine with marriage sealings for same-sex couples in the temple. It'll happen, right? Because look what happened with polygamy, look what happened with blacks in the priesthood. It's going to happen. And it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And if it ever did happen, it would be something of mass apostasy and people leaving the church. It's just not going to happen. It's not part of the doctrine of Christ. And so I think it's very concerning that people preach this. They talk about this. There are people that are going around giving stake firesides and stake presidents inviting these individuals that preach this. And they may not preach it in the fireside, but it's all over their social media. So when the kids go in and listen to these guys and then follow them on their social media, they start becoming an ally, which means supporting the idea of activation and changing things in the church. And it's very concerning. President Oaks clarifies again. He says, and this is, you may not agree with it, but but the intention is true. He says that the reason the church did this was to strengthen the support for the doctrine of the church in its universities, in its temples, in its chapels, and so that we do not need to follow suit with, for example, the big one, same-sex marriage in the temple. That's exactly what it is. He's actually doubling down on strengthening the legal support for the church. Again, you may not agree with that process or whether it actually does strengthen things, but that is what he's doing. That's what the focus is on the support for the Respect for Marriage Act. Now, again, I'm going to go back to the idea of what we talked about with the SEC and the communication with the church, with the membership. I don't think it's very good. I don't know if that's from them, from the PR department, from the attorneys, but it almost, the confusion that's out there, and trust me, I know it's not like I'm the one just confused on it. I am at least have got my ear to the ground, so I kind of know where they're coming from as they're doing this. I don't know their minds, obviously, but I can tell kind of why they do this. But a lot of people can't. And so they're very confused. And so I know they're confused because I get contacted constantly about these things. And the messaging that they put out in the press release was not for the church. That's what I don't understand. Something so big like that. You put out a message out to the world on what you're doing that's very supportive of, hey, it's not about the church. And yet they don't do anything with the membership. And that to me is a problem. And yet here now they're coming out, several weeks later at least, to finally say something, and again, very briefly. And I think that membership needs more than that. I think that there's a responsibility there to the membership of, hey, this is why we're doing this, and don't worry. We need some clarification. There's so many things in our culture right now where we sometimes feel like we're on sandy ground with truth. And we need more of that rock, right? We need direct language, much more direct language, to know exactly where things stand and what we can hang on to, and a banner that is put up there that we can look toward and grab and follow, right? Just my personal thoughts on that. So thanks for walking with me.